She only came to the store for something simple, blending in like any other customer. But within moments, everything shifted. A crowd gathered, whispers grew louder, and then something unthinkable happened. The store manager, blinded by arrogance and prejudice, crossed a line that could never be erased. What he didn't know was that the woman standing before him wasn't powerless. In fact, she held the kind of authority that could change his life forever. How could one single act of cruelty spark a reckoning no one saw coming? Her mornings always started the same way. A quiet run through the park, a quick breakfast, and then a calendar filled with endless meetings. She was a billionaire, but not the kind who chased attention. Success had come from years of hard work, sacrifices, and battles she'd fought in silence. To the world, she was powerful. But on this day, she chose simplicity. No entourage, no expensive suit, no signs of wealth. Just herself, dressed plainly, stepping into a store like any other customer. The aisles smelled faintly of fresh paint and detergent, the kind of ordinary setting where no one expects anything remarkable to happen. For her, this was supposed to be a moment of peace, just grabbing a few items on her own, away from the weight of titles and expectations. She wanted to feel normal again, like she once did before her name carried so much influence. But not everyone saw her as just another shopper. To some, her presence was judged through a different lens, one tinted with prejudice. And in that store, behind the polished counters and neatly stacked shelves, that lens was about to turn into a weapon. She had no idea that one man's quick judgment and unchecked anger would turn this ordinary visit into a storm. A crowd would soon gather, and whispers would soon grow, and in a single reckless moment, everything would shift. This was more than just a shopping trip. It was the beginning of a clash between ignorance and truth, arrogance and power, a clash that would leave everyone in that room questioning what they thought they knew. The store was quiet at first, the kind of hum you barely notice. The beep of scanners, the shuffle of carts, the faint chatter between employees. She moved through the aisles with ease, picking items one by one, content in her anonymity. But soon, she noticed eyes following her, a cashier's glance that lingered too long, a whispered comment from a clerk who thought she couldn't hear, the kind of small, cutting gestures that reminded her, no matter her wealth, no matter her power, the world still measured her by the color of her skin. At the center of it all stood the store manager, a man whose voice carried sharpness, whose presence seemed to demand submission. He watched her like a hawk, his expression narrowing with each step she took. To him, she wasn't a customer. She was a suspicion, a threat, someone who didn't belong. When she reached for a product on the shelf, his footsteps closed in. He didn't offer help. He didn't greet her as he did with others. Instead, he followed, circling, whispering to his staff as though warning them. The atmosphere shifted, the room thick with unspoken judgment. Shoppers began to glance over, curiosity stirred by the tension they couldn't yet name. And then, without reason, he confronted her. His voice rose above the hum of the store, accusing her of loitering, of making people uncomfortable. She stood still, calm, refusing to shrink. But her composure only fueled his anger. Each word he spoke was louder than the last, echoing across the aisles. Shoppers slowed their steps. Some pulled out phones. Eyes widened as the confrontation grew. The woman said nothing, but her silence was power. Her refusal to bend ignited something ugly in him. His face twisted, his tone sharpened, until his rage boiled over into action. In the single reckless motion, his hand struck her across the face. The sound echoed, sharp, shocking, undeniable. Gasps filled the air. A collective silence followed, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, time froze. She stood still, her expression unbroken, but the room erupted. A mother pulled her child closer. A young man whispered, "Did that really just happen?" The cameras in trembling hands captured every second, every angle, every breath of injustice. The manager's chest heaved with pride, as if he believed he had proven something. But his victory was hollow, because what he didn't know was that the woman before him wasn't just a customer. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't someone the world would ignore. Behind her calm eyes was a truth that would shatter his confidence, expose his arrogance, and turn this single act of cruelty into a storm that reached far beyond the store's walls. And as the whispers turned into outrage, as the phones streamed live for the world to see, she knew something he didn't. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The slap still echoed in the air, but the silence that followed was louder than any sound. Her cheek burned, yet she stood tall, unmoving, unbroken. The crowd couldn't look away. Some gasped in horror, others whispered in disbelief, their cameras capturing every detail. The manager's chest rose with false pride, convinced he had put her in her place. But then, something shifted. The woman reached slowly into her bag, not with anger, but with purpose. She pulled out a sleek black folder embossed with the golden emblem. The whispers grew louder as she opened it, revealing documents with a name that no one in the room expected to see. Her name, her signature, her ownership. In an instant, the atmosphere cracked wide open. The store didn't belong to the man who had just struck her. It belonged to her. Every aisle, every shelf, every paycheck, including his, existed under her authority. The realization spread through the crowd like wildfire. Phones shook in trembling hands, capturing the fall of a man who had just destroyed himself. The manager's face drained of color. His voice faltered, stumbling between excuses and disbelief. But there was no undoing what had been done. His arrogance had blinded him, and now the world was watching. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her silence was louder than any shout. Her composure was more powerful than his fury. And in that moment, the balance of power flipped entirely. This was now no longer just about a slap. It was about a truth too big to hide, a truth the world would see replayed again and again. And as the crowd stood frozen between awe and outrage, one question hung in the air like a storm cloud. How could a man so certain of his power be so blind to the very person who held it all? The store erupted in chaos. Employees whispered nervously, customers shifted uneasily, and the manager, once so bold, now shrank beneath the weight of his own actions. Security was called, but not for her. This time, all eyes turned on him. The woman, calm and unwavering, stood taller than ever. She didn't need to retaliate with rage. The truth had already done its work. His downfall was inevitable. Within hours, the videos went viral. News outlets replayed the clip on loop, dissecting every frame, every second of arrogance and injustice. Headlines screamed the same truth. A store manager had struck the very woman who owned the building he worked in. The story wasn't just about one man's mistake. It became a symbol of something far larger. For Ver, the slap wasn't what defined the moment. It was the reminder that prejudice knows no boundaries. Not wealth, not status, not success. No matter how far you rise, there will always be those who see only skin before they see humanity. But this time, the world was forced to reckon with it. The humiliation he tried to place on her only revealed his own ignorance. And in exposing him, the incident revealed a deeper reality. Racism isn't just about words or actions. It's about the quiet assumptions, the unchecked biases, the arrogance that festers in everyday spaces. She walked out of that store not defeated, but empowered. And for those who watched, the question lingered long after the video ended. If this can happen to a billionaire, what happens every day to those without power, without cameras, without a voice? The answer is one we cannot ignore, because until we confront these truths, the cycle repeats. The story doesn't end here. It continues in countless lives, in countless moments, waiting for us to decide whether we'll finally break it. So ask yourself, when will we stop letting arrogance blind us to humanity? And when will we start seeing people for who they really are before another story like this unfolds?